The air crackled with anticipation. It was February 21, 1965. The Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, New York City, buzzed with the anticipation of hearing Malcolm X speak. He was a beacon of hope, a voice for the voiceless. But the promise of his words would be tragically cut short. As Malcolm X stepped up to the podium, chaos erupted. Gunfire shattered the air, transforming a moment of unity into a scene of unspeakable violence. Malcolm X, the fiery orator, the fearless advocate for civil rights, lay dying, struck by 21 bullets. The nation reeled in shock. How could this happen? Who would silence such a powerful voice? Decades later, the questions linger, a testament to the enduring mystery surrounding Malcolm X's assassination. The scars of that fateful day remain, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the steep cost of justice denied. The assassination of Malcolm X sent shockwaves through the nation and the world. Here was a man who had risen from the depths of poverty and incarceration to become one of the most influential figures of his time. He challenged the status quo, demanding equality and justice for Black Americans. His words resonated with millions, igniting a fire for change. But his assassination served as a brutal reminder of the deep-seated racism and violence that plagued American society. The official narrative pointed to members of the Nation of Islam, the organization Malcolm X had once embraced but later left amidst growing disillusionment and threats. 3 men were convicted, but doubts persisted. Whispers of a larger conspiracy swirled, fueled by inconsistencies in the investigation and allegations of a cover-up. The truth, it seemed, remained elusive, buried beneath layers of official secrecy and the passage of time. The assassination of Malcolm X was not just a tragedy, it was a crime shrouded in unanswered questions. From the outset, the official narrative seemed riddled with holes. Witnesses described seeing more assailants than were apprehended, and suspicions grew about the role of law enforcement. Had authorities, aware of the threats against Malcolm X's life, failed to provide adequate protection? Or more ominously, was there a more sinister force at play, one that sought to silence a voice deemed too radical, too disruptive? Fueling these suspicions were the actions of the FBI and the NYPD. Both agencies had infiltrated civil rights groups, including the Nation of Islam, often using informants with dubious motives. Malcolm X himself had been under constant surveillance, his movements tracked, his conversations bugged. The extent of this surveillance and its potential role in his assassination remained a subject of intense speculation. Adding to the intrigue was the 2021 exoneration of 2 of the men convicted of Malcolm X's murder. This development, based on newly uncovered evidence, only deepened the mystery. If the wrong men had been imprisoned for decades, who was truly responsible for orchestrating and carrying out this brazen act? The exonerations breathed new life into the quest for justice, prompting calls for a comprehensive reinvestigation into the events of that fateful day. The official narrative, once seemingly set in stone, began to crumble under the weight of scrutiny and new evidence. The assassination of Malcolm X, it became increasingly clear, was not a simple open and shut case. It was a complex web of intrigue, potentially involving government agencies, informants, and a conspiracy that stretched far beyond the walls of the Audubon Ballroom. For over 5 decades, the family of Malcolm X has lived with the unbearable pain of his loss and the gnawing uncertainty surrounding his murder. But they have never given up hope for justice. Led by Malcolm X's daughters, the family has tirelessly campaigned for the truth to be revealed, demanding accountability for those who orchestrated and carried out his assassination. In 2023, the family took a bold step, filing a $100 million wrongful death lawsuit against the CIA, FBI, NYPD, and other government entities. The lawsuit alleges that these agencies conspired to silence Malcolm X, withholding crucial evidence and framing innocent men. It paints a chilling picture of government overreach and abuse of power, highlighting the lengths to which authorities were willing to go to suppress dissent. Central to the family's legal battle is renowned civil rights attorney Ben Crump, known for his unwavering pursuit of justice in high-profile cases. Crump argues that the government's actions were not just negligent but deliberate and malicious, driven by a desire to silence a powerful voice that challenged the status quo. He points to the FBI's extensive surveillance of Malcolm X, the infiltration of his organization, and the withholding of evidence as clear signs of a cover-up. The family's lawsuit is not just about financial compensation. It's about holding those responsible accountable for their actions. It's about exposing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. It's about ensuring that Malcolm X's legacy is not tarnished by lies and deceit, but celebrated for the truth and justice he fought for his entire life. Section 4. Unraveling the Threads, the Original Investigation. The original investigation into Malcolm X's assassination was deeply flawed. Witnesses were disregarded, evidence mishandled, and a rush to judgment led to wrongful convictions. 2 men were later exonerated, leaving unanswered questions and a sense of injustice. Malcolm X had expressed concerns about his safety, yet his security was thin on the day of his assassination. Police officers who normally stationed themselves inside the ballroom were absent. This lapse in security raised serious questions about the NYPD's role. The FBI's failure to disclose its informant's presence added to the controversy. The original investigation was a textbook example of how not to handle a high-profile murder case. The exonerations in 2021 confirmed the truth was far more complex than the official narrative. Section 5. A Life Under Watch. Government Surveillance and Malcolm X. Malcolm X was not just a charismatic leader. He was a thorn in the side of the establishment. His fiery rhetoric, his calls for black empowerment, and his critiques of government policies made him a target of suspicion and surveillance. From the early 1960s onward, Malcolm X's life became an open book to government agencies determined to monitor his every move. The FBI, under the direction of J. Edgar Hoover, saw Malcolm X and the civil rights movement as a threat to national security. Hoover, obsessed with rooting out communism and maintaining a tight grip on power, authorized extensive surveillance of civil rights leaders, including Malcolm X. Wiretaps, informants, and mail intercepts became standard practice, as the FBI sought to gather information that could be used to discredit, disrupt, or neutralize its perceived enemies. The extent of the FBI's surveillance of Malcolm X was staggering. His phone was tapped, his mail was opened, and his movements were tracked. Informants infiltrated his organization, reporting back on his activities and his private conversations. The FBI even kept tabs on his family and associates, creating a web of surveillance that extended far beyond Malcolm X himself. This relentless surveillance had a chilling effect on Malcolm X's life. He was constantly looking over his shoulder, aware that his every move was being watched. The constant scrutiny took a toll on his personal life and limited his ability to organize and speak freely. The government's actions, while couched in the language of national security, were nothing short of harassment, designed to silence a dissenting voice and undermine his movement for social justice.